Who wants another scary story? Because I've got one that, I'll be honest, I didn't like this one. Didn't sit with me right. It happened to a man while he was on a little staycation with his wife. Him and his wife decided to go to like a really fancy hotel while a lot of conferences were on to have a little break. I mean, how romantic, right? A little conference break holiday sounds great. Anyway, the hotel was really big and really busy. And when they were in the line to check in, they were kind of having a nose around, seeing like people there for the conference, speakers, whatever. It was approaching their time to check in, and as the receptionist called the couple over to check in, the man's attention went to a man walking through the lobby that was wheeling a coffin. Now, the husband just kind of stood and stared because he didn't expect to see a coffin being pushed through a hotel lobby, and was being pushed by a man that was dressed like an undertaker. He was quite tall, wearing a black suit, and as he walked past him, he gave the husband a little wink, and he said that wink was a bit menacing, like he noticed him. So then the husband caught back up with the wife and said, since when are funerals held in hotels? And the wife went, what? And he went, that man wheeling the coffin. And he directed his wife to where the man was, and they couldn't see him anymore. So then the husband went to the receptionist and said, do you have a funeral here this weekend? And the receptionist went, no, we just have the conference on. So the husband just thought, okay, that's pretty weird. Maybe he's here selling a coffin? Like, that's weird. Thought nothing of it, got the key to the room, went upstairs, had a look at the conference itinerary. Both the wife and the husband wanted to hear like different speakers that were speaking at the same time. So they made a plan to go off, go do what they were doing, and then meet back up in the room later on so they can get ready to go down to a dinner reservation. So the wife goes off, finds her speaker, and the husband is looking for the room for the speaker that he wants to go see. And he's kind of getting lost in this big grand hotel, and he ends up finding a room that's really big, really empty, and in the middle is the man with the coffin. Now the coffin's open, and he has a little sign next to him indicating that he is selling coffins or funerals. And as the husband goes to back out of the room, the coffin salesman notices him and says, oh, come on in. So out of curiosity and I guess politeness, the man walks over, and this guy, I guess, starts selling him a coffin. He's saying how comfy it is, how it's made out of the best materials, how nothing's going to get through, how it's lined, how you could literally spend eternity in there, and also how when it's shut, it's silent proof, like no sound is getting in or out. So the husband's kind of nodding his head and he's like, I'm not really in the market for a coffin at the moment, but thank you. And he goes, well, everyone's going to need a coffin one day. And the husband kind of laughs and he goes, yeah, but I'm not really here. I actually want to go see a speaker. And then the man interrupts him again and says, why don't you give it a go? Like, lay in it, see how roomy it is, see how comfy it is. And the husband's saying, I'm not going to get a coffin. Like, that's weird. And then this guy's bugging him and pressuring him, saying, get in the coffin, get in the coffin. And the man says, no, I gotta go. Like, walks away, hears some commotion outside, and he goes, okay, give me your card. And he went, you're gonna need this coffin sooner than you think. And when he said that, this was like, nah, I don't like this guy. The husband just decides to go straight up to his room because this guy's kind of shook him up. So he goes up to his room and he waits for his wife, and he tells his wife when he comes in, and he says, I couldn't find the speaker, but I did find the man I saw with a coffin, and he tried to sell it me, wanting me to get in it. And the wife's laughing, saying, oh, that's weird. And he goes, no, but here's the weird thing. He's not on any of the hotel conference or speaker itinerary list. He's not on there. So the wife's just saying, like, you're thinking too much into it. It might have been a last minute thing. Don't worry about it. Again, he tries to ignore it. They get ready for dinner. They leave their room. They're waiting at the elevator to go down to their dinner reservation. And as the elevator arrives at their floor, the door opens, and there he sees the coffin salesman. And the coffin salesman looks him in the eye and says, are we going down? In a really weird voice. His wife goes to walk in the elevator, and he quickly stops her, and he says, we're going to get the next lift. And his wife makes eye contact and is just like, what are you doing? And the guy looks at the coffin salesman and says, you're not going down to our floor. And the coffin salesman says, again in a really weird voice, well, I'll meet you down there eventually. And then the lift door closes. The lift door closes, and the husband looks at his wife and is like, that's that weird guy. I'm not getting in the lift with him. And his wife's looking at the husband and she's like, have you been drinking? There's no one in that lift. Who were you speaking to? At that moment, they hear a really awful thud and crash and snapping sounds like something bad's going on. The lift broke. It like snapped and fell like 5 floors down. Luckily, no one was hurt because no one was in that lift. What or who was the husband seeing? The husband still has the business card of the coffin salesman, and it's just his name on it. That's all it is on it. But there's no record of that coffin salesman being at that conference or at that hotel, and he wasn't in that lift. So who did he see? Was it like an omen of death? Was it death? Was it... I don't know. I told you this one didn't sit right with me. I didn't like it.
My grandmother is a witch that turns into a pig in Oaxaca. Pues la hacemos carnitas y ya. Oh my god, I'm kidding. Do not curse me. I got scared. Tengo miedo. Tengo miedo. So this guy says that this happened in Tuxtepec, Oaxaca, and he never thought that he would share this story with anybody, but here we are. If you want to listen to the story in Spanish, it is coming from Terror en Palabras, and it is called Mi abuela es una bruja que se transforma en cerdo en Oaxaca. And for those of you that don't know Spanish or just want to listen to it in English, let me translate this for you. So again, this guy says that he never thought he'd be telling anybody this story, but his grandmother is a witch, and unfortunately not a good one. He explains that his grandmother was always just a little bit weird. She was the type of person that never got sick, and she almost always knew things before they happened. He explains that she always had this like stare that would make people really uncomfortable, but he would always try to not pay attention to her. That was until he moved in with her. A few months ago, this happened a few months ago, he ended up moving into one of her rooms that she was gonna charge him rent, and it was really cheap rent, so he had to take that offer. However, she did have a condition if he was gonna live there with her. If you come home really early or really late at night, do not come and tell me. Do not come to my room. Don't come looking for me. When she tells him this, he says that she was serious, but he did accept, and that one of his aunts also lived there with her. She had never gotten married, she never had kids, but just like the grandmother, she was really quiet. It was almost like if she was hiding something. So there was a day where he was gonna go visit his parents, and his bus was gonna leave at 4 in the morning, so he decided to say goodbye to them right before he went to bed. When he went to get the bus around 4 in the morning, he found out that everything was kind of behind and that the bus was not gonna leave until 7 in the morning, so he decided that he was gonna go back home to go to sleep for those 3 hours. That is when everything started happening, because when he, walks back home is when he starts to hear something really weird. It was almost like whispers, the volume of which they were like saying these things and would go up and then it would go back down. After that, he stayed very still because he had no idea what was happening, and that's when he started to hear animal noises. He heard like a pig noise, and then he heard like if there was a cat meowing, and then he heard a growl that he couldn't identify where it was coming from, and he said that it sounded like animal noises but just like different, like twisted. And that is when he started to walk towards where the noises were coming from, and he realized that they were coming from his grandmother's bedroom. When he got closer, he realized that her door was not closed all the way. He decided that he was gonna peek in and see what the hell was happening, and he wished he had never done that. His grandmother was in the center of the room, barefoot with her hair down, and his aunt was right next to the grandmother holding a bucket. Inside of the bucket was something really dark. He said that it looked like it was moving, like if it was alive. He said that there was also 3 other ladies in that bedroom, but he couldn't see their faces clearly because they had really dark veils over their face. Those whispers that he had been hearing were coming from those 3 women, because when he sees them, he said that they were all talking, saying some things, but in different tones. In the center of the room, there was a circle. He doesn't know what it was made out of, but it almost looked like it was glowing. That's when he says that one of those 3 random ladies started saying, "It's coming, it's almost here." He says that whatever was in that bucket started sounding like it was boiling water, but there was no water in there. He says that in that moment, his grandmother just turned her head to the door. He promises that he didn't make a sound. He was as quiet as can be. When he looked into her eyes, there was no white, like they were all black, completely black. And he felt like the air had been taken out of his body, and he didn't immediately turn around and run because he couldn't. He just got out of there as quiet as he could, because at that point he knew that she looked at his direction. He just didn't know if she actually saw him there. He ends up going to his bedroom, obviously cannot go to sleep, but he did wait around for the sunlight to come out. At exactly 8 in the morning, somebody knocked on his door and it was his grandmother. When he opens the door, his grandmother says, "I thought you were leaving." Like nothing happened. She was even smiling at him. Behind her was his aunt, and she was holding that bucket that he had seen. There was like drops of water coming from it. Ever since that day, he's trying to find a way to like move out of that house, but he knows that there is one thing very clear, and that is that they know that he saw them, and he doesn't think that they're going to let him move out very easily.
This is a mental story. Are you ready for this? This one, please keep me anonymous. This is about my old roommate. I'll call her Veronica. This happened during summer 2023, right after freshman year of college. This guy named Ben randomly added her on Snapchat, and at first he seemed totally normal. Same college, same home state, cute enough, funny, whatever. They started hanging out a lot over the summer, and it honestly just seemed like a normal college fling at first. But after a while, she started noticing he had a really bad temper. Tiny things would randomly make him angry, and she told him that she started feeling anxious around him because she never knew what mood he was going to be in. By August, she realised that he liked her way more than she liked him. He did not take that well at all. He flipped out. He started blowing up her phone, calling her horrible names, saying that she used him, saying he'd ruin her reputation, blocking her, then apologising the next day, then freaking out again when she stopped responding. Then one night, things got genuinely terrifying. She was home from college and her little sister was sleeping in her room. Around 11 p.m, her sister woke her up whispering, "Someone's outside your window."
Oh, God.
At first, Veronica thought that she was just being dramatic until she looked over and saw a flashlight shining directly through her bedroom window. She said she could see the outline of someone standing there. Her little sister immediately started crying and Veronica ran to wake up her parents. Her dad grabbed his shotgun.
Medica.
She's walking through the house trying to figure out who was outside. The creepiest part is that they could see the flashlight moving outside the windows as they moved through the house. Like whoever it was literally following them. Her dad finally swung open the front door and standing there in the yard was Ben. Drunk, high, and staring at the house in the middle of the night like an actual psychopath. And he started begging for Veronica to come out and talk to him. Veronica said that her dad looked so angry she genuinely thought her Ben problem was about to end indefinitely. Eventually, she got him to leave, but after that, things only got worse. Once school started again, he figured out where our dorm was, messaged me and all of our friends asking about her, sent weird love letters to her school email, and kept making fake accounts anytime she blocked him. She eventually tried going through campus safety to get a restraining order, but found out that she'd have to face him in court, and if it got denied, he'd still receive the statement she wrote about him, which is honestly insane. Go America. Then one of our friends texted her asking if she'd seen Ben's Instagram stories. Apparently, he'd completely spiraled online. He was posting paranoid rants about being on a government watch list after threatening Elon Musk, blaming his mum for his dad's death, posting conspiracy stuff, just fully detached from reality. Then one day, his final post went up. It was a video of him being loaded into an ambulance. His parents had him committed to a mental institution where he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. This all happened about 2 years ago, and as far as she knows, he's out now and hasn't contacted her again. But she and some of her friends from home still get random calls from unknown numbers, and it freaks her out. Do you want to hear the update?
Yeah.
Okay, update for you because the story just got crazy. The man in this story, Ben, moved out of his house last year, and his neighbour's house has been abandoned since 2021. The neighbour's house was just sold at an auction and 3 dead bodies were found inside. I don't think it's a coincidence that he lived next door, has threatened to kill people, and now there are bodies turning up. I'll attach the news stories. Let me know what you think. The Connecticut Office of Chief Medical Examiner has identified 2 of 3 people whose skeletal remains were found in a Burlington home.
3 bodies discovered inside auctioned home. So now they're doing an investigation into the deaths. Keep us updated. I mean, Jesus, that's going to
give
keep
us the full
unraveling.
story, please.
To this day, my friend and I are still not sure what we saw watching us in the dark, but it still gives us chills to think about. This submission to Spooky Scary Story Time was sent in by someone named Alexis, and Alexis had actually commented on another video saying that she had a story about something that tried to hunt her in her own home, and there was a lot of response to that comment, people asking her to share her story, and so she sent it in. And she says about 5 years ago, she and a friend were having a girls' night and sleepover at the house where she lived at the time with her father in British Columbia, Canada, and her dad was about 6 hours away on a work trip. So the girls had the house to themselves, and the area where they lived at the time is a very small city. She said it's surrounded by dense brush and greenery, and there's a large forested area about 1 minute away from where they were living. But there was no one else home, and the girls were watching movies when they decided to take a break and step outside to get some fresh air. And they were standing on the front porch when they had this sensation of somebody or something watching them. Alexis instinctively looked over into her neighbor's yard where the sensation seemed to be coming from. And she said about 20 feet away from her house is the neighbor's house. And in between, there's a chain link fence that stands about 4 feet high. And in the neighbor's yard is this archway that they have vines growing up. She's looking at this archway when her eyes catch the glint of something. And it seems to be this creature that's crouching in the archway. Described it as very large and very skinny with see-through gray skin that was so transparent that she could sort of see the bones protruding through. She said it had visible veins and it had jet black eyes, and they didn't seem large and alien-like, but instead small and focused. There was no visible fur, and it had very long arms and very long legs, and she guessed that if it were to stand, it would stand about 7 feet high. But she said it was crouched like an animal, like it didn't want her to see it. And she said that she's a reptile owner, and the way that this thing was staring at her was as if she was dangling a rat in front of her snake. It was absolutely zoned in on her and her friend. So she smacks her friend. She's like, "What is that?" And her friend looks over, and she said for a split second, they were both too terrified to move, and they just stared at it as it stared at them. The way that it watched them made her feel like it was studying them, and she said she, in that moment, understood what it feels like to be prey in the presence of a predator. And so they snap out of it and they run inside. And she immediately yelled at her friend to help her lock all the doors and windows. And so they did. As they're going from room to room, making sure everything is locked up, her two dogs, who are a Cane Corso and a Husky mix, are pacing, and they are on high alert as if they know something is outside. Alexa says it was less than a minute from the time they ran inside when all of a sudden the front door handle started jiggling. As it did, both of her dogs ran to the front door, and she says they were both in full attack mode. Her Cane Corso was basically foaming at the mouth. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. And as it stopped, the back door started jiggling. She says she and her friend were absolutely terrified. It was like they were sitting ducks. They just waited for it to end. And then this creature seemed to move again from the back door to the front door. And it did this several times. And each time as it moved, the dogs were running back and forth. Then whatever was trying to get in seemed to give up because both doors went silent, and the dogs seemed to calm down for a minute when all of a sudden both girls heard a bang coming from the bedroom, and then it sounded like something was trying to break in through the window. The sound at the window startled both dogs, and the dogs went crazy again, and this all lasted a few minutes. And meanwhile, the girls were trapped in the kitchen, afraid to go into the bedroom to see what was trying to get in. But she said they had grabbed sharp objects from one of the drawers, and they had already called Alexis's friend's mother to come and pick them up. They basically told her, "We can't explain now, just hurry and get us as fast as you can." Because as they waited for her friend's mother to come and pick them up, time seemed to move slower than normal because whatever was trying to get in was trying to get in and hurt them. She says just as quick as whatever this was came, it left, and her friend's mother arrived less than 15 minutes later, and when she got there, she looked at them like they were crazy because there was no sign that anything had tried to break in. She looked in the yard and saw nothing, and Alexis called her dad and asked him to review the interior cameras. Unfortunately, they had none outside, but her dad saw nothing besides the front door and the back door's knobs jiggling. Like there was clear proof that something had tried to get in, but what that thing was, nobody knew. Says, "I'm going to call it in. I think someone was trying to break in the house," and they were insistent. They were like, it wasn't someone, it was something. But Alexis says a couple years later, she was sitting on the road where the forest is about a minute away from the house, and it's called Tyler Street on this gravel pull-off. At this point in her life, she had tried to put that incident away from her mind, but at that moment, she saw this thing again. The sun was setting, and she sees the same creature, now standing on two legs, come out from behind a tree, and it stared at her for about 30 seconds. It locked eyes with her, and she said, "I wasn't going to sit around and wait to figure out what it was. I put my car in gear, and I drove off as fast as I could." She says, "I'm still not sure exactly what I saw, but to this day, it terrifies me, and I don't feel like that was the last time I'll see it." Said sometimes I've even dreamed of it and it still terrifies me. If you have thoughts for Alexis, that is her real name, let her know. She'll be seeing the comments. And if you have a spooky scary storytime submission, one you think no one will believe or something that still leaves you unsettled, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
The footsteps outside your tent at night may not always be an animal. Welcome back to the series where I tell true horror experiences submitted by you, the viewers. Today's true horror experience is submitted by viewer Lil Manen. Thank you so much for submitting your experience to the channel. This one is ridiculously creepy, and honestly I was just starting to enjoy camping. Can't have anything these days. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Today's experience takes place in Europe, Sweden. My name is Max, and last Monday, me and my two friends decided to go camping in the Tiveden National Park. We'd of course seen the videos online, claiming that weird and unexplainable things tend to happen there, but we remained fairly skeptical, packing up our things and leaving that evening. Truthfully, it took a while to get there. The hike itself was fairly tiring, and by the time we had set our tents up, it was already starting to get dark. At first, everything was normal. We cooked, talked, and admired the beautiful sights, mainly because there was absolutely no phone service. The only thing of note was that it was unusually quiet. Not even the sound of a single bird, just silence. The next thing I remember was waking up suddenly in the dead of night. My eyes took a while to adjust, but my ears, they didn't need to, as I could clearly hear the sound of footsteps circling around the outside of our tent. I lay there in complete silence, my eyes wide open with a mix of intrigue and complete fear. For a moment I thought I was imagining things, until I heard the faintest of whispers coming from my friend's sleeping bag. Can you hear that? We all lay there in complete silence, praying that whatever it was that was outside would eventually go away, but it just kept circling and circling, as if we were its prey. Until eventually, they suddenly stopped. Silence. We waited a moment before checking outside, shining our flashlights to reveal that nothing was there. It was most likely just an animal that was intrigued, even though none of us really believed that. The next morning, as we packed up our things, my friend gestured towards me whilst pointing towards the ground. As I made my way over to look at this certain point of interest, I stopped, and with it a painful surge of fear coursed through my body. Embedded in the ground below was a print, and it wasn't an animal's, no, it was human. And what was most peculiar about it was that it wasn't a boot. It was as if the person was in their bare feet. It became painfully clear that what we had heard last night was certainly not an animal, as we followed the print circle around our tent. But what was strange was there was no prints entering or leaving our campsite. It's as if whoever it was just vanished. Understandably, we left not long after, following the same trail back to the car. We'd been walking for quite some time by this point. It felt like it took much longer walking back than it took getting there, but we continued, until I noticed we passed the exact same tree for the third time. It was as if we were going in a circle, but we were following the same path the entire time. Our phone still had no signal, so we couldn't check maps, and it felt like we'd been walking forever. Maybe those videos did have a point. Eventually we did find the car, driving home without really speaking that much. When I got home and walked through the front door, one of the first things I noticed was my mother crying. She was in an absolute state, and when she saw me, she embraced me so tightly, asking me where I'd been. I laughed and said I'd just been gone camping for the night, and then she stopped, giving me a stare I will never forget, and said, You've been missing for 3 days. To this day, I still don't quite understand what happened. I don't know who or what was circling our tent that night, and where we were for those other 2 days. Maybe those questions are probably best left unanswered.
Appalachia is known for having some of the scariest stories, but something about a story out of the Midwest is just a little bit creepier to me. I live in the Midwest, and I really don't like to think what's lurking out here in the dark while I read these stories. With that, grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and settle in while I tell you a scary story in my garden, after dark. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. This story was sent to me by someone who wishes to remain anonymous, but they said I can use their first initial B. Hi there. Recently, you and Tea After Midnight have been all over my page, and I absolutely love these stories. I spend way too much time listening to podcasts and watching videos about scary things, and it reminded me of something that happened to me years ago that I cannot explain. When we moved to Missouri, we lived in a women's housing division. The house itself sat in a town that was rumored to be haunted, just down the road from an old prison. It was a white, two-story home built sometime in the early 1900s. I don't know the exact year, but it had that unmistakable old house feeling. We had lived in old houses before, so there was always a few rules. Bedtime was at 10 p.m., no kids allowed in the basement, no kids in the kitchen, and we had quiet hours from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. These rules were simple, and we kids followed them every day without question. At the time, we lived upstairs, and there were 3 beds in our room. I shared one with my younger brother, and my 2 older brothers shared another. My mom slept in the 3rd. Nothing ever happened in that room, but there was always something unsettling about the larger bedroom to the left of the stairs. I can never explain it. It just felt wrong. When the family that was living in that room moved out, we moved in sometime around January or February. The first few nights were quiet. Nothing happened, but I couldn't stand the right side of the room. Something about it made my skin crawl, so I always slept on the left side, in a metal twin bed. The frame was made entirely of metal, with bars on both the headboard and the footboard. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. And I don't mean tossing and turning. I mean I physically couldn't get myself to sleep. I felt uneasy, like something was watching me. I remember lying completely still, stretched out under the blankets, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. But then I heard tapping. At first, I assumed it was just rain hitting the window, but then I felt something grab my right foot through the blanket and pull. I froze. I clamped my hand over my mouth so that I wouldn't scream, and I pulled my legs up to my chest. I stayed hidden beneath the blankets for what felt like hours, terrified to move. And when I finally worked up the courage to peek out, she was standing at the foot of my bed. She looked like an older woman. Her hair was wild and frizzy, her eyes were sunken deep into her face, and her skin was unnaturally pale. She wore an old ragged nightgown that looked like it belonged in another century, but what I remember most was not her clothes or how she looked. It was her smile. It was stretched impossibly wide across her face, with a crooked, tooth-filled grin. Her head was tilted ever so slightly, as if she was studying me. That is when I did scream. I remember waking my mom up, crying so hard that I could barely breathe, and I slept beside her for the rest of the night. The next morning, there were red marks wrapped around my ankle where I'd felt something grab me. And to this day, I still have nightmares about that house. No matter how many years have passed since then, I don't think I'll ever forget what I saw. Those close to me know that I love ghosts, I love the paranormal, but something grabbing me would be enough for me to maybe give it up altogether. Do you think what was at the end of her bed was a ghost? Do you think it was some other creature? I have never had something touch me like that, but my mom has, and I'll have to tell that story another day. If you have your own story to send in, please shoot me an email. Otherwise, I will see you out here in the garden in the dark for another scary story soon. Bye.
Welcome back to a series of spooky stories. My encounter with a demon. I'd like to be anonymous to protect my identity. My encounter with a demon. Disclaimer, names, places, and certain details have been changed for safety and privacy. The events described are true to my experiences. When I was a child, my parent remarried and we welcomed a younger sibling into the family. From the very beginning, my sibling's father's family never liked me. I don't like that because what the fuck do you mean you don't like somebody's kid? You're marrying into their family. That includes their children. You want to act weird towards a kid? That's fucking weird. I can never quite figure out his father's stance. Sometimes he tried to push my parent to neglect me to satisfy his family, but at other times, he quietly backed her up when things got tense. The grandmother, however, was openly hostile. There was something cold and calculating in her eyes. She seemed convinced that I would ruin her son's marriage. What the fuck do you mean? I've been able to see spirits and other presences since I was very young. I still can, though I've learned ways to maintain peace of mind. Once these things know that you can see them, they don't always leave you alone. I've always kept it to myself, though, and never discussed it with anyone, not even my parent, unless she pried because of concern. After the remarriage, my parents' partner convinced us to leave our hometown and move closer to his family. I don't like where this is going. We ended up living with the grandparents while waiting for an apartment that never materialized. Why would your parent want to move in with somebody who openly does not like you as their child? The house itself was unsettling. I can imagine you're living with people who don't fucking like you. That alone is going to feel unsettling. The vibe is going to be off, you know what I'm saying? It was old and oddly put together, right next to train tracks that shook the windows and floors at all hours of the night. From the outside, it looked like a two-story house, but inside it was just one, with the backyard sunk into the ground, accessible by only a small flight of stairs. All the windows were at least 11 feet off the ground. That's bizarre. The only bathroom was long and narrow, almost hallway-like, and the only way to reach it was through the grandparents' bedroom. Even worse, its proportions felt wrong. Because they were wrong. What do you mean? The ceiling's unusually tall, amplifying every creak and groan of the house. The first night I slept there, I clutched my bunny plush, my only familiar comfort, and curled up on an ancient couch on the far side of the house. I wasn't allowed to sleep in my parents' room as demanded by my siblings' family. I really don't fucking like these people. So I had to sleep in the living room. I had already experienced things that made sleeping alone terrifying, but I was told it was time to cut the cord. I cried silently, clinging to the plush, and tried to sleep. A few hours later, a train rattled the house awake. As I drifted off again, I heard footsteps crossing the kitchen into the living room. Expecting my parent, I turned, but no one was there. Night after night, the same eerie feeling of being watched would grip me. During the day, I locked those fears away, pretending everything was normal so I could make it through school, but the sleepless nights left me constantly drained. There's just some bad juju in the house that is also draining your energy, you know what I mean? Other strange things started happening. I would catch glimpses of pale, unknown people standing outside the high windows. What do you mean standing outside the high windows? Their glazed eyes staring in, sometimes pressing hands against the glass. Impossible, since the windows were over 11 feet off the ground. Yeah, I remember that. So how the fuck?
The person that sent me the story called it The Witch's Grave, NE Ohio, My Frightening Experience. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. While I currently have been bouncing around New England for almost a decade now, my original home comes from a small town in northeastern Ohio. I won't say the name of the town, but anyone who might be familiar with the area might know exactly where I'm talking about when I say West Branch National Park. West Branch is a large forested area with a lake for fishing and swimming, various hiking trails, and trails for riding things like four-wheelers. Growing up, I heard a few various stories about the woods being haunted and some legends like a woman in white who haunts the woods. One of the most notable stories or locations is the Witch's Grave. From my understanding, from what I was told to me back during the time of the Salem witch trials, the fear of witches had spread as far as this area of Ohio. How correct that is, I'm uncertain, as I never put research into it, but I digress. During this time, there was this woman who was considered to be a healer, as she was very knowledgeable about herbs and ways they can help. Unfortunately, because of this knowledge, she was seen as a witch and stone-pressed to death. Lovely. Lovely. Off of one of the hiking trails in West Branch is a concrete/stone area with a stone fence where it is believed that is her final resting place where she was put to death. The official story is that it's just a regular family plot. I have been to the gravesite several times during the day, as it is fairly easy to find during the daytime. In the center of the plot is a large stone that apparently was once a headstone that has a Wiccan carved into it. Just outside the fence is a rather tall and skinny tree with a lack of branches. Instead, it's covered in marks that look like branches wanted to grow, but never did, and it makes the tree look as if it is covered in eyes. It's not just a few handful of them either. There are tons of them, like over 20. Between some of the eyes is more Wiccan carved into the tree, and I've been told it's called a seeing eye tree and is to ward off evil. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about Wiccan to know if that's true, but I would believe it for how the entire atmosphere feels in that area. Anyone out there know anything about this, about a seeing eye tree or about like the branch? Has anybody know that? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. Visiting the witch's grave, for me at least, has always been a very calm and relaxing experience. It didn't matter how I felt prior to arrival. As soon as I went to the grave, it was like there wasn't a worry in the world. It was beautiful and peaceful. But here's where things start to get spooky. Like the dumb kids we were, my friends and I often wanted to visit the grave at night. The strange thing is, the gravesite is near impossible to find at night. During my day visits, I would take a sharp note of where the unmarked path was to the grave and how far down the main trail it was. And out of the 5 attempts my friends and I had tried to visit the grave at night, I have only ever been to the grave maybe twice at night. We've been in the exact spot the path was supposed to be and couldn't find the path or way to the grave. It was almost as if you could find it if something wanted you to. My first visit to the grave at night was probably the most notable visits ever. When you're walking up the main trail at night, be it your eyes playing tricks on you or something in the woods, it looks and feels as if there is this tall shadow figure, a little humanoid in shape, darting back and forth further down the trail. While walking, there's this overwhelming sense of feeling as if you are being watched. It feels menacing unless you make it to the grave. Just one step over the stone fence and all of that tension vanished. I no longer felt as if we were being watched, or I might even say hunted. As soon as I stepped into the plot, the forest had gone completely silent. No animals, no bugs, nothing, just silence. But it didn't feel ominous like when the forest would normally go silent. Like the daytime, it felt calm and relaxed. I felt safe. If the forest going silent could ever mean anything good, this was the time. I have never known the forest being silent to mean anything good, but I'm glad that you felt safe. You're probably protected by the tree. But my spooky story isn't actually about that. It's about the last time my friends and I tried to find it at night and couldn't. It was the same usual stuff leading up, trying to find the unmarked path, the darting shadows, guard up, feeling as though someone was watching us. After failing to find the path to the grave, we gave up and in a defeated fashion headed back towards the car. As we're heading back, one of my friends points to one of the vehicular trails and suggests that we just adventure down there since we have nothing else to do. With our dim flashlight, we all agree and begin to head down that trail. We walk for a little while, and at this point, I'm feeling extra on edge. My guard is strongly up, and something doesn't feel right. What happened next, in quick succession, in the time frame of maybe 30 seconds? We walk over a small bridge, and our whole group of roughly 6 people just stop in their tracks. The forest is quiet. Despite the moonlight illuminating the area, it feels extra dark. The air feels thick and threatening. I look to my right as we stop and see what looks like a black dog, similar to a wolf or coyote just a few feet away, calmly walking towards me. Feeling panic, I circle around one of my friends who was standing closest to me and I point out this dog when I notice everyone looks stunned, in shock, staring forward. I follow their gaze to this insanely tall, humanoid-looking figure, easily 10 feet or taller. I don't remember any of the details of exactly what it looked like aside from tall and lanky because the moment we saw it, we didn't stick around. In unison, we all turned around and bolted the other direction, each of us running as fast as we could. Thinking back, the dog had vanished just as we witnessed this large thing. We didn't stop running until we got back to the car. I can remember while running, looking behind us a few times and thinking that dark shadow figure we frequently see on the trail seemed to be following us. When we got back to the car, we promptly piled in like a bunch of clowns because there was way too many of us for that car and left. I know we all saw the same thing, but the only talk we had of it was the normal, "What was that? I don't know," in the car after. We never spoke of it again, aside from just the mention that we saw something and we never returned to try to find that grave at night. I don't know if the wolf dog was connected or something else entirely either. In my memory, it didn't feel frightening, but that thing haunts my memories. Even though I don't know the details of how it looked, I fear the memory would haunt me more if I did know. The end! Okay, oh my God, first of all, second of all, my first thought about this dog was that it was like a black dog or a hellhound, although I think those may be kind of the same thing, but I'm not 100% positive. And I wonder if it was either, you know what? I don't know. I was going to say, I wonder if it was a companion to this big fucking thing. But now I'm thinking, as I'm literally out loud processing, now I'm thinking, because you said that the dog itself didn't feel evil and it felt calming, I'm wondering if the dog was a warning for the big thing. Like if the dog was maybe something to do with the witch, or even if it had nothing to do with the witch or the witch's grave, maybe the dog was something that was trying to warn you and protect you from the big fucking thing. Like, that's what's going through my mind now, only because you said that you weren't frightened by the dog itself. You were frightened by the giant fucking entity that who knows what the fuck that was. And is that the same thing as what you would see, like, crossing back and forth in the trail, and you just were like, oh, that's just like shadows or whatever? Is that the same thing? Did you, like, accidentally venture down to where that thing is when you went down that trail that you decided to just, like, walk down? I don't know. That's what I'm thinking right now. Originally, I was like, oh, black dog or hellhound. But now I'm like, warning. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for sharing.
And at this point, I'm happy that I don't have a job anymore, because what do you mean you're simply doing your job and then this happens to you? It all started when an electrician was assigned to work on this house right here. It's important to know that he was not the first one. Yes, an electrician before him, another one, was assigned to work on this house, but he simply and mysteriously quit just like that. So after that, the former electrician quit, they sent this one. He was like, okay, let me see what I can do. So the new electrician got inside the house and he started looking around, trying to see what he's working with. After that, he checked the ground floor. He went down to some kind of cellar, and this is what he saw. Okay, this is already weird, because as you can see, there is water on the ground, and it's not that old. After that, he went to this dark spot right here where you can see these plugs. It's an electrician stuff. I don't know this shit, okay? I don't want to say bullshit. Anyway, he was doing his job, and this is where he heard footsteps. The footsteps were really loud, so the electrician immediately got to the spot where he heard them, and this is where the door got shut in front of him. Yes, basically somebody was in that house and the guy was not there alone.
Okay, coming out to this job, the general contractor had an electrician, but he did quit for some reason. Apparently there was some damage down here. They have all the walls open up for us. There's a lot of knob of tubes, so I don't really know what the other electrician did. Yeah, there's quite a bit still. The bathroom, everything's just hanging out. It looks like he did this bedroom, did a little rewire. There's some damage up in the attic too, so he did some rewiring up there, which is nice, a lot easier for us. So there's this pancake light. This wraps back into the living room, so it's one big circle. I gotta go downstairs and check the panel, make sure everything's off and we did everything right. So kitchen looks pretty good. They didn't really tell me where to go. Oh, that's the back room. It's the pantry. Okay. Jeez Louise. So this also is all opened up for us right here. They have some bad wiring that we have to take care of. That can't be exposed like that. Let's head downstairs. Okay, there is a lot of water. Should tell the customer about that. Some exposed wire here too. Okay, so let's go take a look at the panel over here. Looks pretty good. Newer panel. Okay. They got some... What the fuck was that? Dude. Hello? Hello? Oh, hell nah.
When I first watched the video, I read a comment of somebody saying he should have never got inside the house because as you can see, the door is purple, so the owner of the house is connected to a witchcraft or something like... Where the hell is the correlation? Hello?
My child's imaginary friend talked back to me. These stories give me the creeps because I have no idea what I would do if that happened to me. Like, would I take my child? Because imaginary friend would come with. Is imaginary friend only at home? Or does it travel in the car with your child? So many questions, but let's get to the story. This lady says that her daughter was 4 years old when her imaginary friend just appeared out of nowhere. In the beginning, she wasn't too worried. She thought it was her child's imagination, and every kid has an imaginary friend. I did not. No. Lady, not every kid has an imaginary friend. There was one night where this mom overheard her daughter talking to herself in her bedroom. And for whatever reason, she decided to go along with her daughter. So from the living room towards her daughter's room, she screams, "Hey, what's your imaginary friend's name?" Obviously, she's waiting for her daughter to respond, but it was not her daughter who responded. A different voice responded, a voice that was not her daughter's and also not a voice that she had ever heard before. The voice responded saying, "I already told you my name before, but you never heard me. Go back to where I don't hear you again." I wouldn't know what to do. This is how it ended. I don't know what happened after this. I would have simply passed away in that moment. Has this ever happened to anybody? Hopefully you say no.
Tonight's spooky story comes from a school custodian who'd heard rumors about their haunted auditorium in the past. He'd even experienced some strange things himself, but one late night, the auditorium finally showed him where those rumors really came from. So grab a blanket, maybe a snack, and get settled in for tonight's Midnight Confessions, Stories from the Dark. I worked as a custodian at the same high school for almost 17 years. The building was old enough that every hallway seemed to have its own ghost story. From time to time, we'd hear footsteps when no one was there, and items were moved when no one touched them. Normal stuff for a haunted place. But the auditorium was where the real hauntings occurred. Stories of people hearing applause from the empty auditorium had circulated for decades. It usually happened late at night, long after rehearsals had ended and everyone had gone home. A custodian would be sweeping the lobby or checking the exterior doors, and suddenly, a burst of applause would come from inside the auditorium. It would last several seconds and then just stop before anyone opened the doors. During my first few years at the school, I heard the applause 4 or 5 times. I experienced other strange things in there too. Once, I left my room leaning against the stage while I emptied the trash cans in the lobby. When I returned, it was lying in the center aisle beside a small, neat pile of dust. Another time, I heard several seats lower behind me while I was cleaning the stage. When I turned around, 3 seats in the back row were folded down. There were nights when the curtain opened several inches after I had closed it, and mornings when I found programs scattered across the stage, even though the auditorium door had been locked. The incidents were unsettling, but I grew accustomed to them after a while. Whenever the ghosts moved something, I would politely ask them to put it back when they were done. Sometimes whatever had moved would be back where it belonged the next morning. I had never actually seen a ghost until one summer just before the first day of school. The school had been mostly empty throughout the summer, and we were planning for back-to-school orientation. The auditorium would be used for the opening presentation, so everything needed to be cleaned before the parents and students arrived. I had also missed several days of work because of medical appointments, which left me behind schedule. For months, I had been dealing with pain beneath my ribs and constant fatigue that I kept blaming on stress. My doctor ordered scans after blood work showed several abnormalities. The scans led to a biopsy, but I was still waiting for the final results. The night of the encounter, I stayed later than usual to finish the auditorium. The other custodians had already left. Later that night, I noticed my broom was missing. I had left it against the wall near the stage door, but it was not there when I went back for it. Eventually, I found it leaning in a seat in the center of the front row. The seat was folded upright, and the broom had been positioned carefully beside it, as though someone had placed it there on purpose. I carried the broom back to the stage and finished sweeping. By the time I had finished, it was almost midnight. I turned off the stage lights, checked the exit doors, and stepped into the lobby. As soon as I closed the auditorium doors, the applause started. I opened one of the doors. The auditorium was dark, but I could see the faint outlines of the seats beneath the red exit signs. The applause stopped the moment I entered. I switched on the aisle lights. Every seat was empty. Just as I was going to step out and close the door, the stage curtain moved. The 2 halves slowly separated. I had already turned off every light on stage, but a pale spotlight appeared at the center of the floor. My broom stood upright inside of it. There was no stand supporting it. It rested perfectly straight on the bristles, as though someone invisible were holding the handle. Then the seats began to lower, and shapes appeared in them. I realized people were sitting in the seats. They wore clothing from different periods. I saw women in long skirts and fitted hats, men in wide ties and old-fashioned jackets, teenagers in sweaters and uniforms that had not been worn at the school for decades. Some looked as though they had come from a formal performance. Others wore ordinary work clothes, school clothes, or heavy winter coats. Their bodies were clear, but their faces were not. Every face looked blurred, like a picture was taken while someone was moving. I could see the shapes of heads and the dark impressions of eyes, but no distinct features. All of them were looking at the stage. The broom tipped forward. It struck the wooden floor with a sharp crack. Suddenly, every head turned toward me. The auditorium remained completely silent, but I felt the weight of hundreds of people staring at me from the dark. Then the audience looked away from me and turned toward the front row. One seat was still folded upright. It was the same seat where I found my broom earlier. Every other seat in the auditorium was occupied. The spotlight moved from the broom to the vacant chair. The seat slowly lowered by itself. As soon as it reached the bottom, the audience began applauding. I backed away, ran out the door, and left without finishing the rest of my work. 2 weeks later, my oncologist called me into his office. The biopsy confirmed cancer. It had already spread to several organs, and surgery was no longer considered curative. Treatment might slow it down, but the doctor was honest with me about the prognosis. I did not have as much time as I had assumed. While he explained the treatment options, all I could think about was the empty seat. I returned to work on an adjusted schedule that allowed me to continue treatment. Several months passed before I saw the audience again. I had stayed late after a school play, helping clean programs and cups from aisles. When I turned to leave, I heard quiet applause behind me. The seats were occupied. The figures sat in the darkness with their blurred faces turned toward the stage. The front row seat remained empty. This time, they did not frighten me as much. They simply sat there watching me work. I saw them several more times over the following year. They appeared only when I was alone, and usually after the auditorium had been used for a performance or school event. Sometimes they applauded, and sometimes they remained silent. The same seat was always waiting in the front row. Eventually, the treatments and fatigue made it too difficult to continue working full-time. I retired almost exactly 1 year after my diagnosis. I'm still alive as I tell this story, although my doctors have made it clear that I probably do not have much time left. I've thought about the auditorium a lot. I used to think the hauntings were just leftover memories or energy that had nowhere to go. Now, I think they're more than that. For 17 years, I heard them without ever seeing them. Then, 2 weeks before I learned I was dying, they finally allowed me to see the audience and the one place left open among them. As scary as dying may seem, at least I know that, when the time comes, they have saved me a seat. That story is both terrifying and strangely comforting. Let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, thanks for spending the night with me. If you love spooky stories, be sure to follow for more Midnight Confessions.
A girl that I used to Snapchat with in 2021 sent me this photo and I was baffled. She has no siblings, and when this photo was taken, she had no family over. This is genuinely one of the most detailed, ridiculous photos of the paranormal I have ever seen with my own eyes. I randomly took a picture of an empty study hall that I was sitting at, but when I looked at it again, I noticed a figure on the left side of the picture. I'm normally not one to believe in the paranormal, but this one feels unexplainable. When I was 13, me, my cousin, and father did a haunted house tour in North Wales. We walked around the grounds and we always had our phone cameras open on the off chance we would see something. When I saw this through my camera, I froze. I looked away from my phone in that same direction and there was nothing to be seen. The road outside of the mansion is also said to be haunted by the Grey Lady. From what I know, there have been numerous car crashes on this road from people swerving out of the way because of something or someone in the road. After taking this photo, I didn't sleep for weeks.
She moved across the country to go live with her friend, only to find out that the apartment that she was going to live in was haunted. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account I tell spooky stories either submitted to me or found on the internet. Today's story was submitted anonymously. In the summer of 2020, I was living in Washington and struggling to find a roommate. My best friend was living in New York with her husband and suggested I make the move across the country to live with them. Since we had successfully been roommates for 3 years in the past, I agreed and we started planning. Shortly before I moved, my friend and her husband mentioned that their apartment was haunted. She said the presence didn't seem evil, but it did not like her husband. She told me a heavy cat scratching post had mysteriously been moved right in front of my future bedroom door. When I finally arrived in New York, I lifted the post myself and confirmed it was incredibly heavy. Within a week of moving in, I started experiencing things in my bedroom. I had a collectible Buffy figure standing on my bookshelf facing the door, but I found it placed face down with its feet facing the doorway. I tried knocking it over myself to see if it could land that way naturally, but it never did. Soon after, I started hearing scratching noises coming from the wall where it met the ceiling. At first, it was across from my bed, then directly above it. Eventually, I heard the sound of fingernails scratching against one of my canvas suitcases sitting right at the foot of my bed. The apartment's 2 cats also seemed to interact with the presence. One day, a cat was laying on her side next to a hair tie that was completely out of her reach, when the hair tie suddenly tossed itself across the room. Another morning, I found the cat's tunnel moved halfway from the living room into the kitchen while my friend and her husband were still asleep. My friend and I talked about the occurrences on our drive to work one morning. She felt the presence was just a harmless older woman who wanted to be noticed. I lied and agreed with her, but I actually felt like it was a hostile male spirit who was guarding my room and didn't want me there. Our friendship ended 8 months after I moved in and I moved out. While I think our friendship simply fell apart because the living situation didn't work, I still believe that something sinister lived in that apartment. My first thought is, like, you already said before that you had lived with this friend for 3 years. The fact that it ended 8 months after you moved in is so suspicious to me and makes me feel like this hostile male spirit had something to do with it. And I wonder too if the spirit was like kinder to your friend and less kind to you, like maybe it was protective over your friend or something odd and had a plan of getting you to move out of this apartment. Very spooky stuff. Again, this was submitted anonymously, but if you're seeing this, thank you so much for submitting your story. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can, and I will see you in the next one.
According to a follower named Gina, one of the most comforting and yet unsettling things that she has ever experienced happened almost exactly 1 year after the passing of her best friend. And she claims that she still has the photograph, which I'm going to show at the end. Now, before I tell this story, there is absolutely no way for me to verify whether any of this is true and what appears in the image or how it got there. It could be a reflection, it could be a strange trick of lighting, or it could be exactly what Gina believes it is. So take it as entertainment and you can decide for yourselves. Now, Gina told me that her best friend Lauren passed away in 2019 after a long battle with cancer. And they had known each other since they were teenagers. They went through school together. They lived together for a short time in their 20s. And they spoke almost every single day. They were like the sister that each other never had. And Lauren was only 31 when she passed. And Gina said the loss completely changed her life. And for months, she struggled to go anywhere or enjoy anything without feeling guilty almost, because they did everything together. And she said every time that she left, part of her immediately thought, you know, like, Lauren should still be here. This isn't fair. But Lauren had always been the type of person who loved going out and loved living a very active lifestyle. She loved music, she loved dancing, and more than anything, she absolutely loved traveling. And one of her favorite places to travel was New Orleans. And she loved the old buildings, the strange history, the food, the music, the culture, everything. And the fact that the city itself seemed to come alive after dark. And almost a year after Lauren's passing, Gina's husband surprised her with a trip there for a family birthday. And at first, Gina really didn't want to go. She felt like the utmost amount of guilt, but the trip happened to fall during the same week as Lauren's birthday. And she knew, being, you know, one of Lauren's favorite cities, it would bring back a lot of memories. But eventually, she ended up agreeing. So they went. And on the second night, Gina, her husband, and several members of his family went out to a crowded bar near the French Quarter. And there was live music, people were dancing, and for the first time in a very, very long time, Gina said she actually felt like herself again. And then the band started playing a song that Lauren used to sing constantly whenever they went there. And Gina immediately became emotional. You know, maybe it was a little bit of the drinking, but, you know, she tried to hold it together. But after a few seconds, she excused herself and she went to the bathroom. And she said she stood alone in front of the mirror for several minutes. She was wiping away tears and she was just quietly saying out loud, "I wish you were here. I miss you. I wish you were here. This isn't fair. Where are you?" And after calming down, she noticed the bathroom had this huge antique mirror surrounded by dim gold lights. So she pulled out her phone and she took a few pictures of herself, like most women do. And nothing dramatic, just 3 quick mirror selfies before heading back out. And later that night, while sitting at the table, Gina began looking through the photos, and the first one looked completely normal, and so did the second. But in the third picture, there appeared to be someone standing directly behind her. And at first, Gina thought, maybe another woman must have, walked past, into the bathroom or, without her noticing, but she was certain she had been alone. And the figure was partially blocked by Gina's shoulder and the phone, but enough of the face was visible to make out dark hair, her pale skin, and what looked like an outline of a familiar smile. Gina enlarged the photograph, and the longer that she looked at it, the more she became convinced she was actually looking at Lauren. And she immediately showed the photo to her husband, and he didn't even know what to say, because he's a skeptic in general, but he was completely shocked. And he had known Lauren too, and he even admitted that the figure strangely looked like her. It was very similar. And Gina said the picture frightened her at first, but after staring at it for a little while, the fear slowly disappeared and a more of a comforting feeling took over. And she remembered that it was Lauren's birthday week and they were in one of Lauren's favorite cities, and only a few moments before taking the photograph, Gina had stood in front of that mirror in the bathroom, just outside of the bathroom, and told her that she wished that she was there. And Gina now keeps that photo saved in several different places because she is absolutely terrified of losing it and misplacing it. She doesn't claim to know for certain that it's a ghost. I mean, you are in one of the most haunted places in the United States, but she believes Lauren showed up in that picture for one reason, and that's to let her know that she had been there the entire night and that Gina didn't need to feel guilty for enjoying her life and moving on with her life. So what do you think? Was it just a strange reflection, or another person Gina somehow failed to notice, or did her best friend appear in one final photograph in the exact city where Gina wished that she could be there with her? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
What began as a simple visit to an old convent in Puebla ended up becoming a disturbing mystery. While reviewing the photographs she had taken during the tour, a young woman noticed a strange figure peeking out from behind a door. What makes it even more unsettling is that she claims there was no one there when she took the photograph. I went to the Heartwood Insane Asylum in the UK and I captured something peeking out of the top left window and moving away to the left side. The whole building is locked, and it's very unlikely that somebody was able to break in through the lower floor windows considering how far up they go. But even if somebody did manage to get inside, the whole upper floors are collapsed. In a neighborhood in Ecatepec, Mexico, a recently moved-in family began to notice strange occurrences in their new apartment. One night, Mariana, the mother, decided to take a photo of the hallway that led to the building's laundry area. For weeks, she had felt as if somebody was spying on her from that hallway. When she looked at the image, her blood ran cold. The figure captured in the image matched the description of a neighbor who, according to former residents, had passed away over 10 years ago. Ever since they took the photo, the noises have intensified.
Hey, are you in here?
So they heard what sounds like a woman's muffled cries coming from inside of a utility closet. Police search a couple rooms and find nothing, and then that's it? If you haven't seen the video, it was filmed by residents that live in the Empire City's M Tower building, which is a mixed-use complex in Malaysia. And by mixed use, I mean that some of the rooms are available for short-term rental, some are used as office space, and some have actual residents that live there. Well, the residents who filmed this and posted it to social media said that they had heard banging noises and what sounded like a woman crying coming from the utility closet on the 23rd floor. Maintenance at the building said they believed the sound was coming from the pipes, which is something called water hammering, but experienced plumbers are even leaving comments saying that there's no way that's the case. So police were called to investigate, they checked some nearby units, found nothing, and the noises have since completely stopped. And now the residents who heard this are calling for a more thorough investigation to be done because, like this commenter said, the sound may have stopped because the woman was moved or even worse. What do you guys think?
Thanks. Now, one of the things that truck drivers often report seeing is the black dog. Now, the black dog apparently appears to truckers when they've been on the road too long and they start getting tired, and it's sort of a omen, a warning that they need to get off the road or they will be in a terrible accident and lose everything. And I heard one black dog story that stood out to me. There was this trucker who was driving on Interstate 80 one night, and he had been going for 22 hours straight. He starts, getting really tired, so he turns on the air, he turns on the radio, and as he's driving down the interstate, right in the middle of the road, along the yellow lines, is this black dog running right towards him. He slams on his brakes, and the dog goes right underneath him. And he thinks it's weird because he didn't feel anything when he hits this dog. But he feels bad about this, so he thinks, I should get out and check on this dog and at least put him to the side of the road. So he gets out of his truck, and he's, got a flashlight, and he's looking around, and he doesn't find a dog anywhere. So he gets back in his truck, and as he's driving, he radios to another driver, and he tells him, what had just happened to him. And that driver instantly says, "Get off the road right now and go to sleep. Do not drive anymore tonight." And so this driver's like, "Oh, okay." So he pulls off onto the truck stop, and he goes to sleep for a couple hours. When he gets up, he decides to go and use the bathroom inside the truck stop when he sees at least 5 or 6 police cars, in front of this truck stop. And so he talks to one of the police officers, and he goes, "Is everything all right?" And they go, "No, it's just been a crazy night. We were responding to a terrible accident. Truck driver fell asleep, destroyed his rig." And he goes, "Whereabouts did this happen?" And the police officer tells him, and that was in the exact same location that he had seen the black dog. Now, this story takes place in Wisconsin. There's a truck driver. He's doing basically what's, I believe, is called a meet and turn, where one trucker will meet another trucker at a halfway point and they will exchange loads, and that second trucker will take the load to its destination. Now, he gets to this meetup point, and it's just this big parking lot next to a bunch of warehouses. And he's there an hour early, so he says, "You know what, I'm just going to take a nap and wait for this guy to come." So he gets in the back of his cab, and he's just, sleeping. And all of a sudden, he hears barking. And he thinks, why is there a dog in the middle of this, warehouse district? And it starts getting louder and louder, and it sounds like this dog is just, very agitated, almost like it's barking at his truck. So he gets up, and he goes to the front of his truck, and he looks out the window. And he sees a man outside his window. But the man is what's making the barking sounds. And he thinks, what the heck, what's going on? So the dude just gets in the driver's seat and, starts driving off. And this dude is chasing him while barking at the truck. And, he drives off. The other driver calls him like, "Hey, why aren't you at the pickups or at the meetup spot?" And guy, tells him what happened. And he's like, "Well, I'm here. There's no dude. There's no dogs. There's nothing around." And he said after that, he stopped doing these meet and turns because it had freaked him out that bad. So another creepy trucker story that I'd heard is in Greenwich, Rhode Island, there is a truck stop that is literally right next to this old cemetery. And one night, this truck driver, he, pulls in for the night, and he goes in the back of his cab, and he starts going to sleep. Well, it wasn't long before he hears boom, 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 3 knocks on the side of his rig. And he thinks, it's probably like a lot lizard or something. So he goes, he opens up the curtain and he looks out, and there's no one there. So he's like, what's going on? So he closes the curtain, goes back to sleep. Once again, man, he's woken up. Boom, boom, boom. And he gets out this time of his rig and he starts looking around. There's no one outside, no one near his truck. And so he goes back in and he says, you know what, I'm going to sleep in the driver's seat. And if, someone comes and knocks on the door, I'll see him this time and tell him to stop messing with me. So he's laying in the driver's seat and all of a sudden his rig starts up by itself. And he's looking, at the, like, how in the world did this just start up? So he turns it off and he thinks, I need to get a cup of coffee, man. I'm losing my mind. And so he gets out of his truck, goes into the truck stop and starts talking to the lady at the counter. And she goes, yeah, there's right next to here, the cemetery is an old pioneer cemetery from the 1800s. And a lot of weird stuff happens here at the gas station. And so he was tired, but he decided, I'm going to go somewhere else and sleep. And so he got in his truck and just left. This next story is, to me, is the creepiest. There was a truck driver who basically, he drove this flatbed trailer that, and his job essentially was to take cars that had been in wrecks and apparently bring them to this place where they would research these cars and see what they could have done differently to prevent, damage in certain points of the car or death and stuff like that. And so one night he's transporting this wreck that had been in a bad car accident and completely totaled this vehicle. And as he's driving down the interstate, he hears beep, 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 like a horn honking. And he's looking out his mirrors. There's no one behind him. He's thinking, who the hell's honking at me? So he keeps on driving. And once again, beep, 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 he's hearing honking. So he's like, wait a second, is that coming from the cars that I'm transporting? So he pulls off the road and he gets out of his truck. And he goes and he's like looking around at this truck or at the car that he's transporting. And there's no horn honking or anything. And like, he thinks maybe the car, from the damage from the wreck, maybe, it is causing the horn to go off or something. So he gets back in his truck and he starts driving again. And as he's driving, right, he hears the honking. And I mean, his whole drive to the nearest truck stop, this car is honking from the back, even though there's no one inside of it and it's completely totaled. So he pulls off into the truck stop and he gets out and he's walking around the back of his truck, around the trailer. And he's just looking at this vehicle and he's trying to figure out how in the world can this horn honk? And right at that moment, the car starts up and the lights turn on and the engine starts revving. And he's freaked out at this point. And so he goes and runs back in his car and he radios to dispatch and he's like, I don't know what's going on. This car is turned on by itself and the lights are on and it's honking. I don't know what to do. And so dispatch says, go and just look inside the car, make sure that, there aren't keys in the ignition or, check a few things and just, get this load to where it's supposed to be. So he gets out, goes back to the vehicle. And when he looks up into the driver's side, he sees a face of a man just staring at him, looking at him from the window. And he just takes off running, leaves his rig there. And he calls dispatch and is like, I'm not taking this load. I'm not even getting back in the truck to drive to the nearest truck stop. Like I'm done. I'm not doing this. And he quits his job like that day. And he had been trucking for like 20 years. And he said he never would like not, give up a load or anything, and after that day he quit and he never was a trucker again.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah. Hi, bestie Boo Bear. What you doing? It's time to get your snack, right? Yep. And your rolling essentials? Yep. As always, don't forget to go over to my YouTube channel if you want to listen to my stories in long form. Don't forget to go grab your ebook so you're not one of these stories. I have a feeling I'm gonna be stuttering a lot. Anyway, for the sake of this story, let's call this girl Bernadette. Now, Bernadette is a very odd young lady. Everything about her is just kind of odd. The way she speaks, the way she handles herself. Like, she's very much a try-hard / pick-me. So growing up, Bernadette didn't have many friends. You know what I mean? And the fact that she didn't have many friends actually affected her really bad because she wanted friends. She just couldn't keep them. Every friend she's had eventually left her alone because she's just like too much of a pick-me and she's just weird and odd.
So as Bernadette grew up, she got into spirituality, but not the good kind, right? She got into doing spells and this, and y'all get it. Which personally, I think kind of has to do with the fact that she can't keep any friends, because she would literally do spells on her friends without them knowing, right? And you can't do that to people. You don't know what kind of protection they have on them, you know? Especially if you're like a baby. And when I say baby, I mean like you're a baby to this magic stuff. You don't really know too much about it. You're just exploring. Now, Bernadette has a brother. Let's call him Jonah. And Jonah is actually the one who submitted the story. So Jonah is 25 and Bernadette is 23 years old. You know, Jonah had just graduated from college. He met this girl from college, which is like his future wife. And they got into a relationship, like their relationship is strong, all of that, to the point where he's like, I'm gonna bring this girl home. Let's call the girl Julie, the girlfriend. And Julie is absolutely a dark-skinned, gorgeous young lady. I mean, face card T, body T. She's smart, she's educated, which is why I call him Jonah, right? Yeah, which is why Jonah is like, yeah, she needs to be my wife. She needs to be my wife ASAP. Boom. Jonah brings Julie home, and Jonah's parents love Julie. They love her. She got her head on straight. She got her education. She got her own business. I mean, she's the perfect package. She don't play with Jonah. Like, Jonah needs to be on the same type of time. She is on him. Of course, the parents are like, oh my gosh, we literally love her. Like, yes, marry her today. So when he had brought her back home, you know, they all had dinner, of course. The only other person who loved her more than the parents was Bernadette. Bernadette fell in love with Julie, loves her. Bernadette is like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You're gonna be my new sister. Like, what? You are so gorgeous, body T, everything. Also very much excited because she doesn't have any friends. So she sees Julie as somebody that kind of has to be her friend, because obviously she knows that they're gonna get married. So she kind of has like a forced sister. And Julie liked Bernadette too. They met, they talked. Of course she noticed that Bernadette is a little weird, but like, she don't care. Everybody got some weirdness in them, you know? That happens. They get together, they get, you know, their each other's numbers. Julie is like, we should totally go out and hang out, get some coffee, get some drinks, whatever, like, girls. And Bernadette is like over the moon. Everything is going great, right? Everything is going great at first. Until Julie started to realize that Bernadette feels a little bit threatened. And by that, she means when they go out together, obviously guys are trying to get at Julie and not Bernadette. Always the same thing every time they go out. All the guys try to talk to Julie and they all ignore Bernadette. And at first, you know, it seems like Bernadette didn't care, but then it started to feel more like she's acting like she don't care. But really, it's hurting her feelings. So Julie tries to like limit their going out, because Julie knows that she's a very attractive young lady, and she feels bad because it's like she can't tell these guys just go talk to her, but she can't help herself being pretty, you know? It's gotten to a point where sometimes she started to get secondhand embarrassment, because then Bernadette would try to do over the top stuff, you know? Like, just to gain guys' attention. Like, she'll try to overdress and expose her body, or she'll like overdance, and she wasn't very good at dancing, so it just ends up embarrassing her. So she's like, you know what, maybe like going outside like that is just like not really our thing. Like, you know, they still hung out. She just like avoided them going outside. Eventually, I want to say about 5 months later, Jonah proposes to Julie. It was this whole big thing, a proposal, fireworks, everything was just like perfect. Here's one thing though. Before the proposal, Julie also started to notice that Bernadette started to dress like her. Like, it wasn't in an alarming way, because at first she found it cute. Like, oh my gosh, like this is like a little sister and she wants to dress like me, you know? Like, it started to get a little freaky, because then she would start doing the exact same hairstyles as her at the same time. And again, at first she saw it as like twinsies, but then it was just like, it was like every time, every hairstyles, every outfit. She didn't know how to react to it, right? She wanted to say something to Jonah, but she's like, but that's Jonah's like sister. Like, how do I even like present that without making it seem like I'm just hating on her? But what she didn't know was that Jonah came to her about it. We're gonna get to that now. So boom, Jonah proposes, has this whole big proposal. It's amazing. Bernadette says she wants to give a speech. And she gives the speech. The speech very much sounded like envy / pick me / jealousy, just painted with niceness. The entire time that she was giving the speech, Jonah just looks fucking irritated. Like, get her off the fucking mic. And on top of that, she was tipsy too. Anything Julie is telling Jonah, like, be nice, like, that's your sister. And Jonah says to her, actually, we need to talk. Like, after this whole thing, I gotta talk to you. After the whole, engagement, whatever, they finally get some alone time. Jonah is like, I need to talk to you about my sister. She's very weird. And I noticed that she's doing the same thing to you that she has done to all of her past friends. Don't get me wrong. I love my sister, but she's growing this obsession with you. And at first, it's like real love, but then it turns into envy. So Julie is like, OMG, like I noticed it too. I just didn't know how to come to you about it. And Jonah's like, no, trust me, I noticed it too. I know. I knew I had to warn you. I just know I was going to warn you after I proposed to you. That way you know what you're walking into. And she's like, what I'm walking into? What am I walking into? And he's like, don't worry, like I'm not going to let her do nothing to you, but I just wanted to warn you. He told her like, slow down on the hanging out, slow down on the, And she's like, okay, well, you her brother and you telling me, so I'm gonna listen to you because I already had a feeling. That's exactly what she did, right? She kind of just like distanced herself a little bit, and Bernadette noticed it. And that did not help at all. If anything, now Bernadette is starting to hate Julie a little bit. Like, girl. One day, Bernadette and her parents had stopped over their house, well, their apartment. Jonah was there, but Julie was in the room sleeping. So as Jonah and his parents are in the living room talking, Bernadette is like, hey, I'll be back. I gotta use the bathroom. That girl took it upon herself to go in the room while Julie is sleeping and cut a piece of Julie's hair and take it with her. Then she proceeds to put something under Julie's bed and walk out and go back to the living room. Now, a few minutes later, Julie wakes up with this feeling, this intense feeling like something is wrong. She just woke up like, nah, something just feels wrong. Her intuition is going off. What Bernadette didn't know is that they have cameras in the room. Julie is like, let me check the cameras. Like something's telling her, check the cameras, check the cameras. So she checks the cameras. She ain't even go outside yet. She checks the cameras and she sees Bernadette cutting a piece of her hair and putting that thing under her bed. And when she looks under her bed, there is a jar with, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what it is because y'all like to try stuff. But basically, there's a picture of her in there and the picture of Bernadette in there with other things in it. Julie is Christian. And as soon as she saw that, she said, oh, hell no. She went right outside in the living room, told Jonah, showed Jonah the video footage in front of her and her parents. Naturally, Jonah went right in her pockets and found the Julie's hair that she just cut off. Jonah told her immediately, get the fuck out of my house, bro. And the parents, they're not condoning it, but their problem is that they baby Bernadette so much, and that's why she's the way that she is. And Jonah has been the one to try to tell them, like, y'all can't keep, like, babying her. She's gonna keep doing what she does. That's why she can't keep no friends. Jonah basically says she can get the fuck out, and she's uninvited to the wedding. And the parents are like, oh my gosh, that's a bit dramatic. Like, we can tell her that this was wrong, but this is dramatic. So Jonah told them, if you think that's dramatic, y'all are uninvited too. This caused this big entire thing to where family members were texting him and her and like whatever. This is actually something that's ongoing right now. So Jonah wanted me to ask y'all, is he doing too much for uninviting her and his parents to the wedding? It feels like one of those am I the asshole things. Anyway, I'm running out of time. Don't forget to let me know what you were eating. And don't forget to get your book and go to my YouTube, okay? I love you. Bye.
Thought I was being paranoid when an old man kept following me around a store until I realized that my instincts were actually correct. So I went to the store because I was going to make dinner for a family. The lady just had a baby, and so I went grocery shopping. As soon as I got there, one of the first people I saw when I walked in was a very tall, slender old man. He was probably in his 70s. He looked pretty old, but he was able to walk just fine, and he had a couple groceries in his cart. So I grabbed what I needed from the produce aisle, and then I went to a different aisle to collect other items. And when I looked up, I noticed that it was the same man. He was standing like a couple feet away from me, looking at an aisle, like looking at the food on the shelves. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, okay, I keep running into this guy, whatever. I went to the dairy section, and after I collected what I needed from there, I looked over, and there he was again. This time it was like he wasn't even pretending to shop. He was literally standing there, and usually I don't make eye contact in stores that often because I'm just trying to get done what I'm trying to get done, right? But this time I was like, okay, maybe I need to look at him and maybe he'll like, I don't know, register that I'm noticing him. So I look him in the eyes and he literally does not stop staring at me. We are just making full-on eye contact. Super creepy, didn't like the feeling. My intuition felt gross about that. I decided I was going to test it, so I went to the frozen section to pretend to get food that I needed. Sure enough, after I picked up some food, he was at the very end of the aisle, and this is how I knew he totally was following me around the store. So I left the frozen food section and I did like a really weird route to get to the front to go check out. Like I went frozen section to the bakery, back into the canned goods, and then to the front. I went to go check out my food. After I made it to the front, I noticed that he was by the entrance with his cart of maybe 3 items, and he was just standing there, almost like he was scouting for me. At this point, I started to sweat when I was checking out because I know that I was being watched by him. And I checked out, he was still there. I walked right past him outside, and then I saw that, because there's like the door and then the inside and then the other door that you go through. Does that make sense? And so I went through the first door, and then I could see in the reflection of the door in front of me that he was coming out too, and I said, I'm not gonna do this. This is not happening today. So I turned my car, I looked at him, and I turned right back into the store, and I went to customer service, and I said, hi, I feel like I'm being followed. So I asked if I could stand there until I felt like he was gone, and they said yeah. So I waited there for a while. I saw him leave the building about 3 minutes later, and then I waited another 10 minutes before I walked out to my car. I thought that this was the end of this with this old man. So a couple weeks later, I was hanging out with a friend, and I was talking to her about it and how creepy it was. And she told me to like describe the man, and I said, oh, he was like tall, he was slender, this kind of hair, you know, details. And she was like, oh my gosh, okay, I saw like an article on Facebook about this man who had like some kind of criminal record, and he had been previously like convicted of stalking women in the area. And I guess she saw some kind of like warning by somebody that she follows on Facebook to watch out for this man. I don't know, apparently on his record, like this was a few years back that he was convicted for this. So I went home that night and I actually searched him up, and yeah, the article was there. She was right. He was convicted of stalking women like a few years ago. I'm not sure what would have happened if I didn't turn back to go into that store, but I know that I was definitely being followed. And this is your sign to always follow your intuition.
Because what would you do if you recently moved into your new house, your whole family is sleeping but you, and all of a sudden you feel a literal hand touch the back of your head? Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Let's go ahead and get into the story because it absolutely creeped me out. This girl writes that when she was about 11 years old, her and her family had finally moved out of a 1-bedroom house to a 3-bedroom house. They were all very excited about this and that they were going to have their own space. Her and her sister were going to share a room, and they couldn't have been happier about it. She said that where their room was in the house, window view was straight into their backyard. She says that their mom had bought these lacy white curtains to hang up, and that it honestly didn't cover anything, but that it was super pretty and they liked it. However, she said on this particular night, you could hear her dad and her sister snoring super loudly, and that everyone always had their doors open. Definitely hear if someone was going to be walking into their room. She's facing the wall and trying to fall asleep, but all of a sudden she gets this sudden urge to just hug her sister. She knows her sister is sleeping and is on the whole other side of the room. All of a sudden her body just goes into this complete frozen state when she feels a literal hand touching the back of her head. And honestly, in that moment, I think my natural reflexes would have come across and just smack the crap of whatever it was, because who is touching me right now? My whole family is asleep. I didn't hear nobody walk into this room. Who touched me? But she said in this moment, she couldn't scream, she couldn't breathe, she couldn't move. She was just in a frozen state. She said that the hand was warm and gentle and that it felt like it lasted hours. She knew it wasn't her sister because she could hear her sister snoring, and she could also hear her dad snoring across the house. She knows that her mom doesn't like roaming in the dark, so if it was her mom, she would have turned on some lights. It was still completely dark. She even said at one point that the hand just kind of started scratching at her head, but finally let go and left. However, when whatever this was left, she didn't hear any footsteps. Call 911, call the priest,
Ghostbusters, somebody. I think I would have just simply passed away, honestly. My soul would have left my body. She said that she immediately ran over to her sister's bed to make sure she was okay, and she seemed untouched, still sleeping, snoring. Said that after she saw that her sister was fine, she slowly tiptoed her way to her parents' bed to wake them up to tell them what had happened. I'm not quietly tiptoeing around nothing. I am sprinting, shouting to tell my parents what just happened. But when she told her parents, they just told her that it was a bad dream and to go back to bed. Me personally, I'd have been so pissed because, excuse me, I think I would know if I was sleeping or if someone came into my room and was touching my head. But I guess with talking to them, she just kind of told herself that, yeah, maybe I was dreaming, I guess, and just goes back to her room and goes to bed. I wouldn't have been sleeping a week the rest of the night. That's all I know. So she wakes up in the morning, goes to school. Now when she gets home from school, that's when she sees a bunch of cops at her house. She immediately just sprints to her parents to make sure everyone's okay, and she sees that her parents and all her siblings are there and seem unharmed. So naturally she's like, what happened here? Well, apparently in the backyard they had a 2-story shed. Her dad had to go in there to get some tools, and when he did, he went up to the 2nd story. That's when he came across this dirty and frail looking woman. And apparently she just looked at the dad and said, do you still want that one daughter of yours? She's really pretty. I would have been like, I told y'all someone was touching my head. Y'all owe me one big apology. That's all I know. Said that for the longest time it was hard for her to fall asleep because she just somehow thought that this lady was gonna come back for her and her sister. She was absolutely terrified, and honestly, I don't blame her. I'm glad to know she wasn't crazy and that for once in these stories it wasn't a ghost. It was just a crazy lady that was living in their shed. Hope you guys enjoyed another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Like always, if you have a story that you want me to share on here, you can send to the email that's in my bio, but y'all make smart choices and please make sure all of your doors and windows are locked.
Want to get creeped out? Let's talk again about the Real Hellfire Club. In a previous video, I talked about the haunted rooms at Loftus Hall, and specifically how this mysterious stranger showed up at Loftus Hall one night during a storm, stating that he was a shipwreck survivor. The family winds up letting him stay, and they wind up playing a card game. And Tottenham, a lady living in the home, was playing the card game as well. She dropped a card, bent down to pick it up, and when she did so, noticed that the mysterious man had cloven hooves for feet. I said to some of you that this story might sound familiar, and that is because a very similar situation happened at Mount Pellier Hill in Ireland. This event that happened at Mount Pellier Hill happened during a meeting of the infamous Hellfire Club, and this is the Real Hellfire Club. And by the way, the Real Hellfire Club was said to do some really messed up stuff, including like unaliving people, sacrificing animals, like all this crazy shit. Anyways, one night they're having a little club hangout at Mount Pellier Hill when a mysterious stranger shows up to play a card game with them. One of the players drops a card, goes to pick it up, and notices that this mysterious stranger has cloven hooves for feet. The mysterious stranger winds up vanishing in a ball of flames and leaving behind the smell of sulfur. Sounds very familiar. In both of these stories, we have the devil, maybe, showing up in disguise, being discovered during a social gathering, and leaving in fire or smoke, marking his presence, like a dog. So, were both of these locations visited by the same entity, or is this an archetype tied to Christian morality, sharing tales about gambling, warning you not to gamble, be prideful, or welcome strangers? Honestly, if I saw a person who had cloven hooves for feet, I don't think my initial reaction would be devil. I think I would immediately be thinking the Fae. However, Slewfoot. Have you read it? Masterpiece. These stories remind me of Slewfoot. Anyways, that's it for this one. See you next time.
I heard my coworker screaming from the walk-in freezer even though she wasn't in the building. This is Scare with Jess, and today's story is about the voice that tried to convince me to open the freezer after closing. I worked nights at a small restaurant in college, and one night my coworker Mia left about 10 minutes before me while I finished counting the register. I was completely alone when the freezer alarm started beeping, and then someone pounded on the door from inside. 3 hard hits, so I froze. And then I heard Mia scream, "Open the door." I ran toward it, and my hand was almost on the latch when something stopped me. Mia had already left. I pulled out my phone and called her. She answered immediately, and I could hear her car running. I said, "Where are you?" She told me she was already halfway home, and from inside the freezer her voice screamed, "Where are you?" Exactly the way I had just said it. Mia went silent on the phone, and then the thing inside repeated her next words too, half a second after she said them. "Don't open that door." And from the freezer, "Don't open that door." I backed away. The pounding started again, and Mia told me to leave through the front entrance. And then the voice inside changed. It sounded like me. "Mia?" I stopped moving. My own voice began crying behind the freezer door. "She's leaving me." I told Mia I was getting out. The freezer went completely silent, and I made it halfway across the kitchen before I heard the latch move. slowly, like something inside was figuring out how it worked. I grabbed a mop and jammed the handle beneath it, and the freezer door shook so hard the metal shelves beside it rattled. My voice screamed, "Don't leave me in here." I ran towards the front door, and behind me something snapped, the mop handle, and then I heard the freezer door open. I didn't turn around. I made it outside and locked myself in my car. Mia stayed on the phone until she reached the parking lot. We sat there together until the morning manager arrived. He searched the freezer and nobody was inside. There was one thing he couldn't explain. The inside of the freezer door was covered in bloody fingerprints. Not on the handle, but higher up, like someone had been pounding on it with both hands. I quit a few days later and Mia did too. I still don't know what was inside that freezer. I just know it had listened to both of us long enough to learn our voices. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
I personally love urban legends, especially the ones that are misunderstood, and I really feel like the Mothman is one of those. This story starts in Clendenin, West Virginia. I think I said that right. Correct me down in the comments if I didn't. But it starts on November 12th of 1966 when a group of grave diggers saw something incredibly scary. They saw this creature in the sky and it was kind of darting from tree to tree. They described it as a huge brown-winged human being. Then just 3 days later, another group in a small town called Point Pleasant, which I believe is close by, said that they saw the same thing. This time they saw the creature standing in front of their car. They said that it was huge, standing about 6 to 7 feet tall with a 10-foot wingspan. They claimed that they tried to escape this creature and drove away as fast as they could, but they said that the creature was able to keep up as fast as 100 miles per hour. They claimed that the creature chased them into the outskirts of town before it disappeared into a field. There would be several more sightings of this creature that was dubbed the Mothman. Then, a year after these sightings, on December 5th of 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed. Unfortunately, 46 people would lose their lives that day. The bridge collapsed because it was initially made to sustain the model or the Ford Model Ts going across the bridge, and the cars that were coming out were significantly heavier, and it got congested and the bridge collapsed. The weird thing is that this was not the last time the Mothman has been seen before a disaster struck. Allegedly, the Mothman was seen before the swine flu outbreak in 2009, and then also seen in 2011 before the disaster in Fukushima, Japan. So is the Mothman really a dangerous creature, or is he just trying to warn us that disaster is coming? Is he just misunderstood? What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
What would you do in your last moments? 60 minutes. A giant timer just appeared in the sky, black, bold lettering, basically as ominous as you can get, and it wasn't a billboard or any type of sign. It was literally just a projection hovering over our town like a deathly harbinger. As you can imagine, it freaked everyone out, and traffic signals just became a suggestion as everyone rushed home to their loved ones. Cell towers shut down because thousands of people were calling their family and friends to say goodbye. There was no other information besides the clock just ticking, its numbers slowly going down. 45 minutes. It only took 15 minutes for the looting to start. Grocery stores are full of people hauling out televisions, gaming consoles, and junk food. Basically, imagine Black Friday, but everything goes. I watched from my window as my neighbor, a devout vegan, fired up her grill and cooked enough bacon to feed probably a room full of lumberjacks. I mean, I'd be impressed if I wasn't so afraid. 30 minutes. All of the doors and windows are locked. My family is huddled together in the living room, sharing stories from our childhoods, laughing and crying while still have time left. We're kind of immune to the chaos going on around us. 15 minutes. The streaks have gone silent. Everyone's either gone or dead. My dog is asleep with her head in my lap, just completely oblivious. And my family stopped talking because there's not anything really left to say. 5 minutes. We hold each other close, although we know we can't protect each other. The end is near, and we just brace ourselves for what's coming. 2 minutes. My dog licks my hand as I shake violently. She knows I'm afraid and she wants me to feel better, so I just rub her head and tell her I love her. 30 seconds, we close our eyes, squeeze each other's hands, and say I love you for the last time. The clock hits 0 and we wait. And then we wait some more. I mean, nothing feels different. My dad is the first to look outside and he screams. So we all come running over and the timer's gone, just replaced by a message. Now you know.
He never believed in paranormal stuff. That was until strange things began happening in his current home. Welcome to the first episode of my new series, Hair and Horror After Dark, where we'll be talking scary stories, conspiracy theories, and unsolved mysteries, all while prepping our hair for bed, because nothing is scarier than bedhead in the morning. Tonight, we're going to be reading a Reddit story that was posted just 5 days ago, and it might have you questioning who turned out the lights. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. This originally started one night a few years ago when I was laying down for bed. My dog, who has since passed away, started growling at the door, and he never growled. Then he jumped off the bed and walked toward the door, continuing to growl. I immediately get up, turn the light on, and look around, but nothing. I walk around the house, go downstairs, and still nothing. I ask my wife if she heard anything, but she didn't. I come back up, the light is off, like the light switch is flipped, completely dark upstairs, and I'm super freaked out because at this point, I'm thinking someone is in my house. I go through every room, every closet, ready to punch someone. I don't find anything, and I'm so freaked out, I sleep downstairs on the couch. I started thinking my wife is messing with me, and I let it go. The next few days, my dog is growling again, but this time in the living room upstairs. There's nothing there, but he's acting like there is. At this point, I'm telling my wife this stuff, and we're joking like there's a ghost or something, and I'm still thinking maybe she's just been messing with me. The next weird thing happens when my wife is coming upstairs while I'm on my computer, facing away from her. I have a little desk lamp, and the moment she reached the top of the stairs, the light turned off on its own, making my room completely dark. I freak out and turn it back on. At this point, I know she's not messing with me, and she realizes something weird is going on. The longer these weird things go on, I just get this feeling that something is there. Sometimes I see a movement out of the corner of my eye and just get chills, and it feels like someone else is there. 2 weeks ago, before my dog passed away, I was woken up by what I thought was my wife calling my dog, and he jumped off the bed and ran toward her. But when I get out of the bed, I see my dog come back into the room and follow me out as I leave. I don't see my wife. If she comes upstairs, she always says hi to me. And I go downstairs and my wife is in bed. We have separate rooms. The most recent thing to happen was tonight. I got this sudden feeling like someone was walking into my room on my right side. And when I look over, I see nothing. So I say out loud, if someone is there, turn the lights off. But nothing happens. It's probably in my head, I'm thinking. I get up to stretch and run downstairs, and I go to turn the light on, but it doesn't turn on. At this point, I'm freaked out. I head downstairs to tell my wife, and she's also freaked out. So she comes back to check the light, but once again, it doesn't turn on. So she walks halfway and checks the bulb, but it was unscrewed. I don't know what to do, but I feel like I can't sleep upstairs anymore. And I also forgot to mention, my wife is saying that she hears footsteps upstairs even when I'm not home. Now, when I first read this post, I immediately thought back to being a kid and trying to time turning off the lights and running upstairs so that way I wouldn't get caught in the dark. And of course, forcing myself never to look back. But there's a saying that goes, the dark is nothing to be afraid of. It's what's in it that you should fear. And it is concerning that their dog passed away. And I wonder how exactly. And reason being, oftentimes dogs and other animals can sense when there's evil near. And I guess I've seen too many movies where the dogs are taken out of the equation. And once they're no longer there to be a warning, things kind of get ramped up. So I'll be looking for updates, but hopefully there are none. Well, that's it for tonight. If you have a personal story, mystery, or theory that interests you, feel free to send it in. And with that being said, say your prayers, good night, and I'll see you in the next video.
She was a former house cleaner for this family, but then a few months later, she finds out that all of them have been shot and killed. Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Like always, if you guys have any stories that you want me to share on here, you can send it to the email that's in my bio, but let's go ahead and get into today's video. This girl writes that she used to be a house cleaner for this family back in 2019 in Minneapolis. She said that it was a mom and 2 kids and that they kept the house pretty tidy. She always got this sad, rundown feeling every time she went there to clean. She just figured it honestly was because it was an old, creaky house. She's sure that many people have lived there and come and gone, but she just always got this strange feeling about the house. She said that the mom was very mild-mannered, soft-spoken. She just had this quiet confidence about her, and she just seemed like such a gentle soul. That most of the time when she came over to clean the house, that the mom was in the office doing work calls, but sometimes she was left there in the house alone. She noticed that both the boys have these Pokemon bed sheets and have books thrown all over their room. Said she didn't interact with the boys very much, but that they seemed like goofy, silly boys that had a hard-working mom. She said during one of her cleans that she was doing, she was tidying up the office. There were a bunch of papers scattered across the desk. She neatly put the papers all together because she was going to dust off the desk. So that she noticed that the top paper in the stack was actually from a lawyer and it was going over different details with finalizing the divorce proceedings. She said that she did not read any further than that, but that's when she discovered that the mom was going through a divorce. She said that she decided to leave the cleaning company in the fall of 2020, ends up moving out of Minneapolis altogether and goes to move in with her parents all the way in Virginia. And she writes that a couple months later, just that December of 2020, she gets an email from her former massage therapist that she forgot she was subscribed to her emails. The massage therapist was saying that she was actually going to be taking a leave of absence, that her daughter's boyfriend and his whole family had been killed, and that she was trying to help out in any way she could and be there for her daughter. She ends up also including these links in the email. These links go over this database that includes victims from gun violence. Well, this girl writes that curiosity got the best of her, and she clicks on the link to find out who the boyfriend was and who this poor family was. She said after a couple minutes of searching, she is startled to see that the mom and 2 boys that she had just been cleaning houses for a couple months prior were the victims of this. So she decides to Google the mom's name, and when she does, that's when she sees that the ex-husband had come by the house to pick up the boys for their hangout. This time, he brought a gun. So when the kids run outside to see their dad, they're so excited, but then they realize he has a gun and they try to run away. And then that is when he shot both of them out in the yard in front of neighbors. And right after this, he goes into the house and begins to stab the mom, and then ends up shooting her and then immediately shoots himself as well. He allegedly left a note behind, but that has never been released to the public. Said that while she didn't know this family personally, it still felt super strange to have been cleaning for them for a while to find out that they had been murdered. And after that, she started doing a lot of research on families and divorce stuff and why people get to the point where they think killing them and their family is the answer. But I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Honestly, the story was super sad. Y'all make smart choices and stay safe out there.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of when we went to this church, that does nothing but recruit people to become traditional healers through traditional herbs, muti basically. So y'all, my cousin and her mom invited us to a church, me, my older sister, and my mom, but then it was only me and my older sister that were able to go. We got there, whatever, they started playing their drums and it was fun, it was nice. And as people are circling around a fire, my sister fell, right? And when she fell, she kind of like started to like get scared because they caught her, right? And then she was like, you know, she couldn't say anything. And they were like, oh, give us space. And they kept on being like, Togaza, because that's how they get people who are in a trance to speak, because apparently an ancestor speaks to them. Through them, sorry. So my sister did that and she didn't say anything. And then afterwards, it was time for us to leave. We went inside the car and we asked her like what she had seen. And she told my aunt that, I saw a snake. Like when you guys were going around the fire, like there was a snake that was circling around you guys. And it was a really big snake. And the snake kept on going through people. And every single time it went through a person, this person fell down. Every single time this snake went through a person, this person fell down. And he's like, she's like, when it was her turn for the snake to get like through her, she saw it and it saw her and she fainted, and that's why she was so scared. Fine, my aunt is like, like that's crazy, wonder what's going on. My aunt takes these news and tells the pastor like, listen, this is what my niece says she saw, blah blah. The guy is like, listen, bring her back, let's pray for her. Hi, Kat. They call me as well, right? I go there with my older sister. We get there, we're kneeling down, and they are pouring us with water, buckets and buckets of water, because apparently my sister has a demon. Hi, my sister doesn't react to anything that they're doing, and then they tell her that she needs to come and attend the church so that they can help her. My mom is believing all of this. My aunt is also believing all of this. Like, we keep going back and forth to the church until one day there is a lady at my mom's workplace that told her and was like, "Ay man, you cannot just listen to one opinion and think that is it." My mom listened to this lady but didn't really take it to head until my sister was told she needs to go and become a traditional healer. So what had happened was my sister had been attending that church like nobody's business. Like Wednesday, I think there was church. Thursday, there was church again. Saturday, sometimes there was church. And then Sunday was church, definitely church. And so my sister was told that she needs to be a traditional healer because she kept on fainting in the church. She kept on having this thing that's telling her that she needs to go and become a traditional healer, and this is the person that she needs to go and initiate at, blah blah blah. And apparently that person was not part of the church, and this pastor was like, "Yes, you need to go, you need to go, you need to go." Apparently one day she ran. I wasn't there this day. She ran out of the church and she went to this person's gate, and they said no, they need to discuss it with the family. And I think that's when my mom was like, it's time for me to stand up. My mom decides to go to somebody else because my mom is in a different church, you know. So she goes to somebody else and she wants to get like a second opinion at this point. This person tells my mom that you need to get your child out of that church immediately, and your aunt as well. He was like, your daughter is in danger. Basically, in that church, what they do is they pour stuff on the ground so that people fall down and think that they need to go to initiation school. The reason why those people do not go and initiate at that church specifically and initiate at another person is because that church leader, the pastor, as well as the person that my sister said she needed to go initiate at, they are working together. They were going to charge my mom a lot of money to initiate my sister. Whole time my sister doesn't even have a spiritual gift. They were going to charge her a lot of money to initiate my sister, and then they were going to take the money and split it. And then after a couple of months or whatever, my sister was not going to be able to see anything. She was not even going to put that gift to use, and we would have wasted our money because she was going to eventually throw those beads away, and that's how they make money. So he's the guy that was telling my mom was like, the reason why your daughter was seeing a snake is because there is a snake, there is a spirit there, right, that is being sent to people to fall down so that they think that they have a gift, and then they will think that they have a gift, and then they will eventually keep coming and going to the church, and then after that whatever spirit that they think they have will tell them to go and initiate at this particular person, and then the church leader and that person share the money. Whether you have a spiritual gift or not, they don't care. They just want to eat money, basically. So my mom was like, so like, what do I do about my sister, whatever? And the person that was telling my mom was like, listen, bath with this thing and then go and speak to her, because if you're not spiritually strong, you're not going to be able to convince your sister with anything. And as she is next, they're going to want to initiate her. Fine, my mom does the things. She goes to her sister and tells her that, listen, this is what's going on, my dear, we are in trouble. And so my mom's sister listened to her, y'all, and they went to another person, and come to find out the reason why things were not working out for my aunt was because of that church. They wanted her to believe that she has a gift, that like the reason her things are not working out is because there's a certain ancestor that wants her to initiate or become a prophet in that church so that they can eat her money, and then after that, whatever bad luck that they've thrown on her will just eventually go away, because they're going to take it away, they're going to remove it because they are the ones that put it in her. Do you understand? Because a month before my aunt joined that church, her car burned to ashes, and I don't know what happened with her house. Like there started being legal disputes out of nowhere, and then she went to that church, and the person that was helping my mom was like, yes, those people do things so that you can go to that's so that you can run to their church. They even put a spirit so that you only think of their church and you think their church is right. Whole time these people are playing you. And the man was like, listen, I can help you guys. And he helped my aunt, y'all. She worked and got another car. You know, the disputes with her house, whatever, like they just disappeared into thin air. And as for my sister, all of those things just disappeared, y'all. They just stopped one day, and we never ever went to that church again. And those people from that church sometimes ask my aunt, like, when are you coming back? And the person that was helping my mom and my aunt was like, if they ever want to touch your hand, don't agree, because they want to take your soul at this point. They want to bring you back by force. So they're obviously going to play nice until you forget what kind of people they are, and then you go back. Be careful, y'all.
The Villisca Axe murders is one of those cases that I don't think we'll ever get full answers to, but it's one of those cases that you just keep thinking about. The Moore family lived in Villisca, Iowa in 1912, and they were a well-liked family. The family consisted of, I'm going to read this off, Josiah, Sarah, they were the parents, and then they had 4 children, Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul. On June 9th, they had gone to the Presbyterian church where they were members for a Children's Day, and it was that night that Mary Moore asked if the 2 Stillinger sisters, Ina and Lena, could come and stay the night. The Moore family, along with the 2 Stillinger sisters, arrived home between 9:45 and 10 p.m. on June 9th of 1912. It wasn't until the next morning that the neighbor thought that something was off because the Moores had not come out to do their morning chores. So she went to knock on the door and nobody answered. The doors were also locked. So she went out and let out the chickens, and then she called Josiah's brothers to have them come check it out. They used their copy of the key to enter the home, and that's when they discovered a brutal scene. He walked into the guest room, and that's where he found the 2 sisters who had stayed the night, and they had been bludgeoned to death. He then went to get authorities, and they came to discover that the entire family, including the 2 sisters who had stayed the night, had been bludgeoned to death. The murder weapon was Josiah's axe that was found in the guest bedroom with the 2 girls. After going over the scene, investigators believe that the attack started in Josiah and Sarah's room. They were attacked first, and Josiah received the most blows from all of them. This intruder broke in between 12 a.m. and 5 a.m., and he attacked Sarah and Josiah first, and then moved into the children's room, with Ina and Lena being the final victims. They do believe that all of the victims were asleep when the attacks happened, apart from Lena, who did have defensive wounds. There were several suspects that were immediately someone you would look at anyway, and the first was Iowa State Senator Frank F. Jones. Now, he was a wildly successful businessman. He sold equipment, and Josiah Moore actually worked for him and became one of his star salesmen. But there was a rumor going on that Josiah was actually having an affair with Frank's daughter. And on top of that, Josiah had left his company complaining about really long work hours and not a lot of breaks in between. Their relationship soured so much that they would have to cross the street just to avoid each other because they couldn't stand looking at each other. So it's not a reach to think that he might have done this, but he was never convicted of anything or even charged with anything, and it completely destroyed his career. And when people couldn't tie Frank to the actual case itself, they soon started to speculate that he had hired William Mansfield to commit these murders. Many people believed that Frank had hired William, but this would very quickly come to he would not be a suspect for very long because he had a solid alibi for the night of the murders, so it couldn't have been him. Now, there was another man that was mentioned as a suspect, and his name was Andrew Sawyer, and he was a transient, just kind of floating around, and the morning after the murders, he showed up a couple of towns over in a brown suit, but his pants were wet all the way to the knees, and his shoes had mud all over them, but he was cleanly shaven and looked upkept anyway. Now, that's not enough to consider him a suspect, but the fact that he often slept with an axe next to him and also talked about the Villisca murders frequently really quickly made him a target, or at least a suspect. But he also had an alibi for the night. He was several towns over. He was not involved. Reverend George Kelly was also a suspect. He was a traveling minister, and he had actually put on the Children's Day at the church that the Moores had attended the day before the murders happened. He also left really early in the morning, or left pretty quickly after after the murders happened, but before the bodies were found. So people thought that maybe he was involved. What makes him an even stronger suspect is the fact that he had often peeped into people's houses, and a couple of years after, he was taken into a mental health facility because he just wasn't doing well, I guess. He would also send several letters to the police asking about information about the murders, and this really roused suspicion. But again, he was never convicted or charged or convicted with anything. There are several other suspects who people think might have been involved that night, but ultimately, no one was charged, no one's been convicted, and this case is still completely open. And honestly, it's been so long, I don't think that we'll ever get answers for it. But what are your thoughts on it? Honestly, there's so much more to this story, and I highly suggest you just research it yourself. I just cannot cover it all here. So do a little research and see what you think. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more true crime. What happened at the Villisca axe murder house is absolutely chilling, and I will go over it later because it is still an unsolved case, but for now I just want to talk about the hauntings that happen here. The house has been open for people to go view since the 1990s, and ever since it's been open, people have talked about the paranormal phenomenon that they've experienced there, and some of it's really chilling. As soon as you walk into the house, people have reported feeling an unexplained feeling of dread or anger, rage, just all of the bad emotions that you can possibly feel. Many people have claimed to see a strange fog that moves from room to room as they're walking through. Many people have claimed to have captured EVPs even while during the day, like walking through the house during the day. This doesn't just happen at night. What I found especially chilling was some people who had taken their children in to tour this house said that they would walk into what they considered the dark room, and this is where 2 of the little girls died. They said that they found their children playing with ghostly kids, I guess. Which, like, could you imagine walking into a room and watching your children playing with something that isn't there? This is just chilling. But in 2014, there was a paranormal enthusiast who walked into the house with a hunting knife. Now, he was warned not to bring this hunting knife in, but as he was touring the house, he tried to provoke the spirits, and all of a sudden, everything went dark for him. He woke up in the hospital and found that he had a self-inflicted wound because of this hunting knife, which to me is enough to make me never go into this house. He did go back though to apologize for his behavior, which valid because you don't want anything following you home, but still very chilling. But the people who have stayed the night in the house say that about 2 a.m. when the train comes through the town is when the activity gets really haunting. This mysterious fog that is seen going from room to room is often seen at 2 in the morning, and people think that this might be the recreation of what happened there that night. Some people have claimed to have made contact with the victims of what happened there that night, and others have claimed to make a connection with the murderer that was there who did all of this. But I don't know. Do you believe that this is real, or is it all just the imagination running wild when you're in a really spooky place where something terrible happened? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
What happens when the scariest film on Netflix that only 13% of viewers can actually finish is based on a true story? The only right answer is you obviously finish the movie no matter how scary it is, and then you look into the real case. I'm talking about the 2017 Spanish horror movie Veronica, which is labeled the scariest movie on Netflix. So I was one of the 13% that actually finished the movie, but let me just say it was incredibly scary. Like nightmare fuel, make you scared to fall asleep type scary. But I recently found out that this story wasn't just made up. It was based on the real case of Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro. She mysteriously died in 1991 after a seance in which she played with a Ouija board. She lived for only 6 months after playing with the Ouija board, and what she experienced in that time frame is bone chilling. Some people believe her, some are still skeptical. So let's talk about it and you can decide for yourself. The movie Veronica follows a teenager named Veronica and her 2 friends, and it takes place in 1991 Madrid. In the film, Veronica's dad has died and one of her friend's boyfriends has also passed away. So what do? All 3 of them play with a Ouija board at school. You know, the only logical answer. But after this, Veronica ends up possessed by a demonic entity that is hell-bent on torturing her and those closest to her. This movie was a slow burn, but it genuinely freaked me out. The director, Paco Plaza, got his inspiration from the real possession of Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro. And surprisingly, the movie is pretty similar to what she actually experienced. And let me just start off by saying, even if you don't believe in stuff like this is the only case in Spain where a police officer actually investigated. And then he sat down and wrote in his police report that he 100% witnessed paranormal phenomena. So do with that information as you will. Anyways, this is Estefania. She was only 18 years old when she suddenly and very mysteriously died in 1991. She lived in the Vallecas neighborhood of Spain, and by all accounts, her life was pretty normal. Estefania had lots of friends and 5 siblings, so she was always surrounded by lots of people. In 1990, her estranged grandfather was on his deathbed. Now, her grandpa hated his family, but he whispered his last words ever to Estefania, and some people think this is where her haunting began. He told her, quote, "If I cannot harm you in this life, I will do it in the next one." End quote. Estefania and her siblings really didn't want to go and see him, but her parents thought that it was the right thing to do. Fast forward a few months later. This is when one of Estefania's closest friend's boyfriends passed away suddenly in a motorcycle accident. It was very tragic and hard to process for everyone inside that friend group, but Estefania had an idea. She thought that if she got a Ouija board, maybe they could all have a seance and try to contact her friend's late boyfriend. So they did.
Bro, what's going on around?
But almost immediately, things went horribly wrong. They held the seance at their school, so it was Estefania and her 2 closest friends, and according to them, unsettling and unexplained things happened right off the bat. The glass pointer on the Ouija board began to spin around untouched on the board until it eventually shattered to pieces. They never got the chance to contact her friend's late boyfriend because, out of nowhere, the Ouija board started emitting this unnatural smoke, even though it wasn't on fire. Estefania was the only one who sat too close and accidentally inhaled some of this strange smoke, and after this, nothing would ever be the same. A nun at the school ended up catching them and broke the board, but it didn't take long for everyone to notice something strange about Estefania. She would start having violent convulsions where her whole body went rigid, and her eyes would either go completely black or completely white. During these episodes, she would foam at the mouth. She also began experiencing terrifying visions of dark figures roaming her bedroom and almost controlling her. She would randomly attack her family members or bark at them, and then she would black out and have no memory of what just took place. She said these dark shadows would torment her. She could no longer sleep at night, and if she did, she would wake up standing completely upright, scratching the walls. It got so bad that her fingers were bloody. Estefania declined very quickly over the next 6 months, both physically and mentally, and it really scared her family. They had no idea how to help her, so they started by having a doctor examine her. All of her symptoms could be connected to epilepsy, but multiple doctors examined her, and none of them found any underlying physical or cognitive condition. She was never even diagnosed with epilepsy. When doctors couldn't help her, the family turned to priests, but they couldn't help either. One of the very last things that she ever said was that the demons were begging her to come with them. And sadly, just 6 months after the seance and playing with the Ouija board, Estefania mysteriously died. Her autopsy report only stated cardiac arrest as her cause of death, and outside of that, the medical report said, quote, "sudden and suspicious death." End quote. You'd think that would be the end of the story, but no. It doesn't end there. For over a year after Estefania died, her family would continue to be haunted. The house itself became a hotspot for paranormal activity, and somehow it progressed even worse. The family would constantly hear someone scream and laugh in the home, and on several occasions, they would open Estefania's bedroom door, only to find it destroyed. All of her belongings were strewn all over the place. All of the doors and windows in the house would open and slam shut on their own, and deep scratches would mysteriously appear all over the walls. Every single family member saw a black figure crawling around their house in an unnatural way. Furniture was destroyed, appliances would go on and off, and I think one of the scariest things they experienced was a photo of Estefania mysteriously falling off the wall. When they went to pick it up, they found that the picture itself had been burned, while the picture frame was completely intact and undamaged. Every crucifix they had in the house would flip upside down without anyone touching it. The events eventually got so bad that the family actually called the police because they didn't know what else to do. 4 officers came out to the home, and to their surprise, they found the entire family huddled together outside. This made the hair on the back of their necks stand up because it was in the dead of night and it was freezing outside, and one of them even had a newborn with them. So for them to be standing outside like that, they must have been really scared. When the officers went inside, they said they immediately felt like something was seriously wrong. They heard loud banging in the house, even though they were the only ones inside. And while they were looking at a wardrobe, the doors started violently opening and closing right in front of them when no one was touching it. The officers also found this unexplained brown residue on a nightstand that appeared right before their eyes, which some have later said was ectoplasm. Before long, 2 of the officers went back outside and refused to come back in, leaving only 2 of them to continue investigating. The remaining officers noticed cold spots all over the house and occasionally the smell of rotten meat. After their investigation, the police officers left, unable to help this family. But the craziest part is that when the lead officer went back to the station to file his incident report, he actually wrote that he 100% witnessed paranormal phenomena. I think that's the most insane thing about this case. This possession is the only police report in Spain that recorded paranormal events. So whether or not you believe in the paranormal, I just wanted to point this out because I think it's so rare to have actual police officers back people up in cases like this. Eventually, the family couldn't take living here any longer, and they eventually sold their house. What's odd though is that the new owners never heard or experienced anything paranormal after the family left. So this leads me to question, was it really the house that was haunted, or was it the family? I know a lot of people will say that her death was due to an undiagnosed medical condition, which if I'm being honest, I can see that being true. But it is super weird to me that all of this only started happening after she played with the Ouija board. I don't know. What do you guys think? Was she really possessed, or was something else at play? Nonetheless, it inspired this movie. Have you guys seen it? Because it scared the crap out of me the first time I watched it. I think it scared me because it did a good job instilling me with dread and anxiety. But I'm also just a chicken when it comes to possession movies. It scored 86% on Rotten Tomatoes though, which is pretty good. I think any film that says based on a true story at the beginning can be terrifying, but it hits different when you know that it actually was.